Invention. It's the key cornerstone which allows us to create possibilities for advancement and allows us to increase our productivity at work, in life, and at play. It provides us with a roadmap of discovery, of potential, and how to maximize invention to further the conversation of intuitive and innovative thinking. Noah Graff is the host of the podcast, Swarfcast, a business podcast for individuals in manufacturing. When he's not behind a podcasting microphone or behind his computer dropping knowledge as a blogger, he is a used machine tool dealer, or as he likes to refer to himself as, a treasure hunter, buying and selling used equipment around the world for the company Graff-Pinkert. He believes that serendipity plays a huge role in their businesses' success, and he can offer some insightful perspective and some great stories on how the power of serendipity can lead to intuitive and lucrative deals in business, which in some cases can be totally unexpected. Graft is interested in offering strategies to bring serendipity to conversations to close deals, how to create new relationships which lead to lucky breaks down the line, and finally, how to stay mindful of potential opportunities to solve problems and connect the dots in order to be more productive, close more deals, and have a fulfilling sense of accomplishment from a personal and professional standpoint. So let's dive into a conversation about serendipity, because, ready or not, my conversation with Graff starts right now. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. Noah, if you're ready, my friend, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you today all about serendipity and creating relationships that improve our productivity in life, work, and play, my friend. Great to see you this afternoon, and happy Chicago Tuesday to you, my friend. It's great to see you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am honored to be here.
Absolutely. No, I wanted to start our conversation by diving into the concept of serendipity and creating a successful relationships. And how do you think those two things are interconnected?
Sure. Well, I guess probably the first thing to start with, though, is to just let people know. You give a little context of what I do. I work in a family business, buying and selling machine tools. For people who don't know what a machine tool is, it's basically every machine has to have another machine that makes all the parts that go into that machine. If it's a pencil sharpener or a car or whatever, and these are those machines. So we sell machines for manufacturing, used ones only, and we scour the earth looking for undervalued equipment, and we buy it and sell it to other people, or sometimes we don't even buy it. And if you're trying to picture these machines, they can be pretty. One machine could be 10 feet long and 8 feet high, or smaller or larger than that. And some of them are 60 years old, and some of them are 2 or 3 years old. And we specialize in one. It's called a screw machine, and these are dirty and mechanical and often really old, but they're often the ones that people don't know what they're worth. And that's where a lot of the business comes from. We like to say sometimes the dirty machines are the ones you make the most money on, or the sexy ugly machines. So that gives you a little context about what I'm doing all the time. I'm looking around the world, sometimes traveling around the world, looking for undervalued equipment or looking for people to buy these machines. And that's why I sometimes like to call myself a treasure hunter. So back to the serendipity with our business, it's all about making new contacts, connecting the dots, learning important information in various places in order to find new treasure and find people to buy that treasure.
Yeah, and I'm also curious to ask you about, inclusion and diversity in the workplace, and how do you think serendipity can help us create those inclusive relationships?
Sure. Serendipity in relationships, inclusive relationships. I mean, I actually was listening to one of your podcasts today about the woman who she specializes in placing people with jobs. People, how shall I say it? What you know what the one I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is um, I think I don't know. I'm trying to connect it to serendipity. This is one thing we've talked about on our podcast. That's the other thing. I have a podcast sort of about our industry, and we also talk a lot about serendipity. It's mainly about our industry of turn parts. We have people on the show who talk about running manufacturing businesses, et cetera. And one of the things they talk about are the people hiring people, because they have a lot of trouble finding people to hire. And one person we had on was her job was all about hiring convicted felons. And it just kind of made me think of, the underserved, undervalued people. As far as serendipity with hiring, I think there is a lot to do with that. When, honestly, I want to just go back. Let's just take it back to the serendipity. I want to define serendipity because it means a lot of different things to people. Um, I first got into it when I read this book. It's called The Serendipity Mindset by a guy named Christian Bush. And I heard him on a podcast, and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I interviewed him on Swarfcast. And, it's all serendipity is all about making your own. It's about finding luck. And there are ways that you can attract luck and find coincidences that can help your life. And this guy has a book that sort of gives you tools as far as finding this luck, finding new opportunities, finding new people. So, I mean, yeah, you could use it to find somebody to work for you. You could maybe you meet somebody working at Home Depot and you see, wow, this person's really brilliant. And you connect in your head, oh, maybe this person could work in my business. So I as far as that question, where would I see it in hiring? I don't know. What else would you like to know about serendipity?
Yeah, you also tell me that you believe that serendipity can be a happy accident for businesses. And,
Yeah,
as we were talking before we started our formal conversation, I think life in general, Noah, is all about connecting with people and making uh, authentic human connections. There's a, there's a sign in my office that says life is a constant game of networking, and I sort of
yeah,
live by that as sort of a grounding principle for the work I do as a speaker or through this podcast. So I'm wondering how you think serendipity can be a happy accident for businesses.
okay. So this is a great question. So studying this book, Serendipity Mindset, and learning from this guy Christian Bush, he's got some very clever tricks and how you meet people, how you make connections, and how you bring out interesting information. So first thing, there's what he calls serendipity bombs. So say you are looking for something. Say you're looking for some podcast guests to talk about a certain thing. You come up with, 6 different people who maybe these may be long shots to actually get to interview, but you send out emails to all of them, sort of like Hail Marys, and by doing a whole bunch of bombs, it's surprising sometimes that you land some interesting people, and you never would have found those people and found new dots unless you were optimistic and tried to do it. So that's one thing. You've got to try things. And another thing, yeah. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to follow up with you also have to be vulnerable and willing to put yourself out there, not only as a
Yes.
podcasting guest, but whenever you want something in life, my experience has been if you're willing to put yourself out of your comfort zone, you may stumble, but you may also learn something along the way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for instance, just not being afraid to contact somebody, to aim high, or to go up to somebody at an event and um and just go for it, because you're not going to get anywhere just by sitting there comfortable. Make a phone call, find this person that could be interesting, and maybe you know of somebody interesting, maybe you even know of their phone number, but if you don't call them, then you're never going to see what the possibilities are, and you're never going to find this serendipity. Maybe it was serendipity that you encountered somebody at an event you were at or online, but it really won't turn out to be luck unless you actually exploit that. So I think you're totally right. And it was interesting. I listened to this podcast the other day. It was the Freakonomics podcast, and they were interviewing this guy, Ariel Emanuel. You know, Rahm Emanuel, like the former,
Oh,
you know,
what else did you say?
politician. This is his brother. Did you ever watch that show Entourage on HBO?
I've seen it before, yeah.
So you know the agent in Entourage,
Mm-hmm.
Ari.
Yep.
It's based off this guy. So this guy is like super confident, super cocky. You know, he's a millionaire, and he was giving advice for, you know, what are the keys to his success. And one of the things he said was he is comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I was just like, wow, that's like the ultimate superpower. If you just weren't, either you weren't afraid to do whatever, or even if you were afraid or uncomfortable to do something, that you did it. So, okay, so I think you're right on with the vulnerability. But the other thing is, there's another great thing. He calls it serendipity hooks. And this is okay. So say you've bombed and you've put yourself out there and you're vulnerable and you're talking to this person. Now you have to figure out how you're going to get something out of this conversation. So, for instance, if I meet somebody at a conference or something, meet somebody anywhere, and they're trying to be friendly and they say, "No, what do you do for a living?" Now, I do think my job is interesting, but that said, like if I say, "Oh, I'm a machinery dealer," people are going to be like, "Huh?" You know? So rather than say what you do, you say, "Well, you know, I'm a machinery dealer and I also have a podcast. And you know, I'm really passionate about the Cubs because I'm from Chicago and I'm into salsa dancing." And all of a sudden, like, you've got these four nodes out there, and all of a sudden you've got all these things you can talk about. And all of a sudden opportunities come up, new opportunities. Um, for me, you know, in a practical way, for instance, like, okay, I have a machine to sell and I'm going to call somebody up on the phone. Maybe they've contacted me and now I'm returning their phone call. Rather than just return the phone call, I go to their website. I look at all the machines they have on there. I go to their LinkedIn, kind of spy on them, find out, you know, who is this person? What's their title? Are they the owner of the company? Are they, um, how old are they, etc. And then I'm prepared when I call and I say, "Hey, we have this for you." And it turns out, well, maybe he's really not that interested in what we had. Maybe he never really was interested in what we had, but he was sort of looking for something else. You can say, "Oh, well, you know, I saw this Acme on your website, or this, you know, this Star machine. Saw you have those. We also carry those, and we're always looking for those." And all of a sudden, you talk to somebody about something totally unexpected, and often the thing you called about is absolutely different from, you know, what you get out of it, and what you get out of it is way better. I mean, we've had it happen where, you know, we'll go and visit somebody's factory and it turns out we look at the machine and the machine's no good, but then we see something else in the corner and we're like, "Hey, what's that?" And they say, "Oh, you want that?" You know, like, and we just, "Oh, well, you know, we might be interested in that." So it's all, you know, it's about having your eyes open, your ears open. I can tell you a good story about this. Like a month or two ago, there was a machine. It's a CNC machine. It's called a Sugami. We had this Sugami on our website on Graff-Pinkert. That's the name of our company. We had it on our website, and we've had this machine. We've been trying to get rid of this machine for years now. And a guy contacted us about it, and then I called him back, and it turned out he wasn't even looking for this machine. He was looking for a machine that was made by the same company, but it was a different size. It was a different model. And I was like, damn, like this is too bad. And I say, all right, well, if I find one, I'll call you back. This guy, he was from Idaho. I think he sold guns. And then I thought to myself, I have got this friend, Randy, he's another dealer, this guy in California. And he had talked to me the week before about this same model of machine. He had this machine and he was like, I'm thinking of getting rid of it, trading it for another machine. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if it's that good. It all of a sudden it registered in my mind, like, wow, holy crap, this is the same machine that this guy had. So I get on the phone, I call Randy, I say, is it still there? He said, yeah. Gave me a discount. I called the guy back in Idaho. I said, hey, we have it. It was a way better price than some other options he had. And boom, we sold the machine and made, a nice score. It doesn't always happen that fast, but, a lot was going on there. It was, first I had the contacts, I had the dots. And second of all, I had my ears open and eyes open and, an open mind. And that, to me, that's like the epitome of using serendipity in our business to find success.
Yeah, absolutely. And, no, just talking to you for the few minutes that I have, buddy, I know that, embracing spontaneity is also a big part of serendipity, and really,
absolutely,
taking charge of sort of the whole notion of letting things naturally happen. So tell me about both spontaneity and serendipity, because they're interconnected too, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I like to think about is nudges, following your nudges when you feel, again, like you feel the urge to, something's telling you, I need to call this person. Something's telling you, I need to go to this conference, or I need to call this person. Maybe it's random, it's just, I don't know. I saw this person online, and it's a good chance nothing's going to happen, but let's just do it. Let's just try it. And I think, yeah, if you're just constantly planning everything and not reacting to certain things that you see and reacting to your nudges, you're not gonna have the movement that you want to feel good in your life, and it's not going to be much fun to me. I mean, I think some people, I don't know, it's probably some people like spontaneity more than others. Maybe some people are more comfortable with it. Some people probably more uncomfortable with spontaneity. But yeah, I think with the spontaneity, various magic happens. I think you're right on with that.
Yeah, and in your day job, Dylan, or no, I'm also curious to ask you about some of the treasures that you found along the way, and what exhilarates you most about finding a unique treasure along the way. So, why do you love your job so much? And tell me about some of the treasures you found as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really like getting to meet people. Um, Sort of magical when you get to know people. I like, as time, it's easy to get kind of caught up in just thinking about the dollars. You can break it down like, oh, I'm going to buy this machine for $1,000 and sell it for $3,000, and you're not really thinking about what it's doing, who it's going to. I think it's important to remember the substance of it. Uh, I think that the relationships that I get, I've got a robot guy and a guy for this kind of machine and a guy for that kind of machine, and getting to talk to all these people constantly and work together and piece deals together, come up with a way to create some value that other people couldn't do. Uh, I think that's a pretty good part of the job. Um, as far as treasures, just, I mean, I've had some good stories. Like, for instance, okay, so there's a machine, it's called an index machine. This is a big CNC machine. If you bought one of these new, it would be like $2 million. But this machine was from like 1999. So, it was like $250,000 or something. And not that many people in the world need this machine. It's sort of I feel like sometimes the weird machines are the ones you make the most money on anyways. So I I call I find this machine online, this index online. It's in Germany. And then I I get a price on it, and I've got a friend in South America named Claudio, and he's got a customer named Rogerio, and Rogerio needs this machine. So Rogerio, he goes all the way from Brazil to meet me in Germany, and then drive like 2 hours way out into the boonies to look at this machine. He looks at the machine, he likes it, but he's like, listen, I've got to go home and talk to my boss and see, can you, reserve the machine for me? Can I get a hold on it? The guy says, yeah, sure, you can have a hold on it. I told Rogerio, I said, look, man, I'm just telling you, there are no true holds. If somebody else comes along, I'm not going to sell it to somebody else, but if somebody comes along to this guy, it is not saved for you. So sure enough, a day later, I call the guy who owns the machine. I'm still in Germany. And he says, I'm sorry, it's been sold. So meanwhile, this guy, he traveled all the way from Brazil to Germany. I traveled all the way to Germany, and the machine was sold. So I'm just lying in bed, and I think about it. I was like, I left some extra time in Europe because often, spontaneous, serendipitous things happen when you're there, and you've traveled all the way there. So you might as well just, give it the opportunity. So I call this guy in Spain who I had sold a lot of machines to, this guy Javier. I say, Javier, do you have anything you want to sell? And he says, actually, yeah, I have this index MS42, the same machine that Rogerio had traveled all the way to Germany for. I'm like, all right, I'm getting on a plane to Spain. Fly to Spain, look at the machine, come up with a price. And Rogerio's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm interested, but I can't come for a couple weeks. So I'm like, all right. So I come back home, and I'm home, and that machine, it was okay. It wasn't going anywhere. Meanwhile, my wife had just lost her job, and and then all of a sudden, Rogerio is like, "Okay, I can go see the machine. I can go to Spain, and meet you there." And I said to my girlfriend, I was like, "Hey, you want to go to Spain with me? Well, we're going to do this machinery deal, and then we can just like, you know, go and look for other treasure around Europe and just enjoy ourselves." And it was just like the perfect coincidence, serendipity. Like, we went, and she was my future wife. We called it, our first honeymoon. Went, made the deal. The deal was way better than the first deal we had originally. And I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that, right? Like, go back to Barcelona, Spain, and make a bunch of money and have a vacation with the woman you love. So, I mean, that kind of thing. We've bought machines. Like, I bought a machine in Slovenia that was in a barn, and like there was like cows mooing next door. And we've bought machines that were in caves, like underground in Kansas City, that the US government had kept like as part of an arsenal in case we went to war again. We've bought machines from very strange people, in weird places. We bought a machine from a guy in Texas, from this 200-person town in Texas, and we went, and the machine, it was full of rats inside the machine. Uh, just weird stuff like that. Uh, that's the stuff, it's kind of an adventure type thing. With the treasure hunting, I used to go to an analyst, shrink, and I was telling him about my job, and you can break jobs down in different ways. I also make documentary films, and I was telling him about scouting locations for a film. I had made a film about Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all the Chicago locations of the movie, and how I was going from one place to another. And he's like, you're a treasure hunter. This is like finding treasure, like when you're making your movie. And so when you apply that to your work, and you go from, yeah, I buy gross, dirty ass machines and for a certain amount of money, and then I sell them to somebody else for more money. Like, that is a lot different from, I'm a treasure hunter. It changes your mindset.
It's all about changing perspective. And Noah, I have to tell you, just before we move on, buddy, you're a terrific storyteller, and
Thank you.
and providing depth and context to the
That's
stories
like the
you
nicest
tell.
thing somebody's told me today, because that is one of the things I like to, when I do my solo. I interview people in our industry for our podcast, but then I do like solo ones where I tell sometimes the stories that I told you. Like, that's the one of the things I'm most proud of about myself. And I, not to be arrogant, but like, sometimes you're with people, and like something happened to you both, and they're telling the story, and you're just like, hey, look, stop. Let me tell the story. You're leaving out all the good details. So thank you so much. That means so much. I'm really glad that you said that.
Absolutely. Well, buddy, as you know, I tell stories all the time through my podcast. And,
Mm-hmm.
I originally went to school to become a sports reporter. So I love telling stories and engaging in conversation. And you're a terrific conversationalist, buddy. So just before we move on, I want to thank you for providing depth and some real quality to your answers. It's most appreciated.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. I Yeah, I appreciate it. And to you, I think you're quite a good listener, and that, you know I like to think I'm a good listener. We all have our moments where we listen and where we talk, and where it's appropriate. Do you find, I'll ask you a question, as a fellow podcaster, do you find that sometimes you're just not exactly sure how much to interject yourself into the conversation? Because it's like you think you have something really interesting to say, and you also maybe want to, put your stamp on your podcast, but then you also know you need to let the other person have the floor and let them, you know, they obviously have to be the center of attention. But do you ever find yourself like kind of wanting to interject and then kind of like teetering one way or the other?
Well, yeah, I think interjection in a podcast is a good thing in the sense it allows you to elongate a conversation and add more depth to it. For example, Noah, as you know from listening to my podcast, my friend, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy, and one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast was I'm a firm believer that everyone deserves a platform to tell their story from an objective and a non-biased point of view. But I also think that inclusive voices and podcasting in general, in my view, is all about having conversations that move the needle of progress forward. And when I'm able to interject naturally, I think it's just another way to supplement the
Right.
conversation that you're already having. So
Right. Keep it natural. I mean, but remember the name of your podcast. Let's have this conversation. I mean, it's not you know, give your spiel.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, that's why it's
No, I was just gonna say, having a two-way conversation is a lot more interesting for me as an interviewer than letting someone talk to me for about a half an hour about a book they're trying to promote or a service that they offer. If you can engage on a two-way street, it's a lot more entertaining than just
oh yeah, no,
letting people.
you
Yeah.
energize each other. As long as the person is also a good listener, I mean, you energize each other. I mean, one of the things I've found is however, is I've made a few documentaries, and sometimes interviewing strangers, and I also did I did a project a couple years ago where I went an entire year and met one new person every single day. Sometimes it was people on the phone. Um, I met 10 people one day. I wasn't able to like carry over. Oh, I met 10 people one day and then didn't have to meet anybody for 10 days. So what I found, and then I would meet people and I would like, when I was talking on the phone, I would take notes. They wouldn't know, obviously. But it is interesting when you make somebody the center of attention. There's so many people that are just looking for somebody to listen to them, somebody to make them feel like they're the center.
Yeah, and no, we recently celebrated or marked National Mental Health Awareness Month, and
Mm.
I think that podcasting in general is a good way to not only have conversations but bring light to sensitive topics in a approachable way. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts on. Uh, you've talked a lot today about being a good listener, and one of the things that I think that podcasting does, if you're a good podcaster, it means you're a good listener because then
I think
it'll
so.
then it'll spark interest on both ends, and you can even formulate questions on the fly to also let the person that you're interviewing know that you're have to share. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do you ever do pre-interviews? I do pre-interviews probably about 85% of the time, which is, it's interesting. It's really like you're doing two interviews. But then you really have an idea, during the pre-interview, I'm taking notes, and then you really have an idea of where to shape the conversation. And some people go, oh, well, you lose the spontaneity because you're not meeting them for the first time. And there's something to that. But at the same time, like, the second conversation you have is usually like totally different from the first one. But you at least have like an interesting direction to go.
Yeah, but I also think that if you do the pre-interview, and sometimes I do that, just if I'm doing like a political interview, for example,
that makes total sense.
you do that so that you'll ask them questions, at least giving them a framework. But sometimes, if you do the research through the pre-interview process, it can spark natural conversations, and
True.
and you can ask natural questions through research as well. So you can do it both ways.
I totally agree. I think, yes, political, that's like the perfect, and for a lot of my interviews, if it's, people are talking about technical things with machines, or, certain business concepts, and I want to, by doing the pre-interview, I know like which ones to focus on. So, we don't dwell on something that's less important. That said, there's like, and I'm sure you totally understand. There's just a rush when you meet someone new, the spontaneity of it, the magic of it. I get a rush. I don't have a rush, but in the morning, I like to take walks around my neighborhood. I usually I do a gratitude list, or I say the gratitude list into my phone, and but while I'm walking around, I like to say good morning to like whoever I can make eye contact with. And then there's just like a little shot of dopamine I get just from this connecting from to another person, and the positive energy. Do you know what I feel like when you just say hello to somebody and they say hello back? It's just and it's the same when you're meeting somebody new, as long as they have good energy, and and there's a give and take.
Yeah, I tell people that I relish the concept and the process of what I call authentic human connections, and really getting to meet people where they are. And through COVID, a lot of people found out just how valuable authentic human connections really are. So I think connecting with people and learning, I always say that life is a constant game of learning, because no matter how many degrees you have or how many years of school you went through, you can always learn something from
Absolutely.
somebody else. So sometimes it's more beneficial to be quiet and listen to ramble on all the time, right?
Absolutely. I Yeah, well, every single night I write down at least one new thing I learned that day, and then I write down one piece of serendipity that happened that day, or somehow I tried to create serendipity doing a certain thing, and then I keep a diary every day too. It's just so, yeah, you make things count, and you learn things. And if you can't remember something that you learned that day, then I'll like go on Wikipedia or like howstuffworks.com, and just to document something. I know we're learning like lots of things every day, but it's nice to be able to like go back to your day and go, yeah, all right, I did do this day. meant this, you know.
Yeah, and no, I'm fascinated to ask you my next question, and it has to do
Fire
with
away.
yeah. Well, thanks for that. It has to do with curiosity and sort of the diversity of thought and really embracing the diversity of thought. So, how do you think
That's
curiosity?
total serendipity. I mean, that's total ingredient of serendipity, the curiosity. Yeah. So like
Yeah, yeah. So, how do you think curiosity and diversity of thought are interconnected?
curiosity and diversity of thought. Yeah, you mean you're talking about being curious about somebody else's perspective? Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is it's a nice thing if you're curious about what other people think. I think it's not something that people in most modern, at least Western societies do very well. Um, I think we live in an echo chamber. We just want to hear people that think like us. And I'm not going to say that I'm any different. Like to think that I at least try harder than other people to, at least understand where people are coming from. Um, I don't know what is that kind of where you're going with this, or
Yeah, because I think that, I always say that there's strength in diversity. And what I mean by that is, like you said, if we stay in sort of the echo chamber of what makes us comfortable and always agree with people, I think that it stunts our ability to grow. And
yeah,
one of the things that I'm not going to turn this conversation political, but one of the things that frustrates me to no end is both a citizen and as a journalist is that I think that the world has become sort of territorial and you,
mm.
you have to pick sides.
Exactly. That's what
And,
I always say. The team. There's the team. You either have to be on the red team or the blue team, and
there's
and
no
if
middle.
you there's no like I mean, just to get specific, right? If you're in the United States, say you are, you know, very pro gun, Second Amendment, then you have to be anti abortion. And you would have to be you know, fiscal conservative and not, and, anti environment. Say you're an environmentalist, then what? Can you be a fiscal conservative and be pro life? Or be say you're and if you are on one of those teams and you deviate one thing, then everybody will attack you. And you're just like, you know, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. We don't have good choices as far as who we vote for. And I mean, granted, I wouldn't want to go most other places, but um it's just a pity.
Yeah, no, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast is I looked at the world and I said that there has to be a platform to bring us closer together instead of always looking for ways to sort of tear us apart from the
Right.
fabric of people who we are.
And of
So,
course, so many podcasts are all about that. So many podcasts are just about this is what we think, and the other people are wrong.
well, that's why I try to stay in a neutral lane and down the middle, and if I have someone on that I fundamentally disagree with, I still give them access to the platform because at least if I disagree with them, I can still learn sort of the psychology of their thinking, and we can have a much more authentic conversation. Because if you disagree with someone, I think it makes it much more authentic conversation, much more raw conversation, and hopefully in some form or fashion you can agree to come to some sort of a middle to allow people to
Yeah.
be given information and allow them to make the decision for themselves. Because so many podcasts, like you said, they're trying to get you to lean a certain direction over another. Sorry for going on.
They're not even trying. It's not even that they're trying to get you to lean somewhere.
Yeah.
It's that it's just like our listeners are people that lean that way.
And you know, it's always important to sort of broaden your perspective. And
Yeah.
I keep
Problem is,
going.
it's really hard. It's really, really hard to change people's beliefs. Like it's and logic is, I've read quite a bit about this, and logic is just not a very good way to like change people's opinion.
Well,
The
uh,
emotion is so much more powerful to make somebody to maybe change somebody's opinion, to make somebody understand where you're coming from. Like, have you ever heard of, there's a guy named Robert Cialdini?
mm-hmm,
He you're familiar?
mm-hmm,
um One of the things he's all about persuasion
mm-hmm.
and marketing and selling things, and he says, if you're trying to persuade somebody, say a different viewpoint, tell them a story. Maybe, you know, say you're trying to make somebody get vaccinated for COVID. He
Oh
had a thing
dear.
about this. He says, if you go and you tell people the science, but somebody already has decided that they are one way or another, say they're anti-vax, you're spouting these scientific studies isn't going to really change their mind. This is what they believe. However, maybe if you have a story, I knew this person and they got COVID and they died. And the doctor said, had they had this vaccine, they might have had a much better chance. That story may be able to sway somebody a little bit versus just like, well, duh, this is what makes sense. Trust the science, trust this person, trust that person, because both people have their people that they come in with, like, well, you have your scientists, I have my scientists.
Well, it's just like the news network you try to watch, depending on your belief
Yeah, same
system.
stuff.
Yeah, it's the same echo chamber. But didn't want to ask you about manufacturing and sort of the manufacturing economy, and
Okay.
I believe that it may serve as sort of what I call the heartbeat of innovation, because when you invent things, you're really forwarding the conversation as it comes to innovation. So tell me about the manufacturing economy and innovation, and how you think those are connected as well.
Okay. I mean, if you want to get like personal into what I do, I'm a very specific niche of manufacturing. It's machining, metalworking. Um, as far as the manufacturing economy, how things are going, people, it is a heartbeat. That's true. I think that Main Street, the bankers and the people at the Fed and all. There is a bit of a disconnect between them and the people that are making automotive parts, the small businesses there, because a lot of them are still have tons of work, and they still need people, and they still um you know obviously they're nervous like everybody else is nervous, with the interest rates and impending recession and all. But it's interesting how there is a disconnect between various what people think in one sector and another. As far as innovation, and I think our country is wonderful when it comes to we're still the huge innovators when it comes to lots of the important stuff, and other countries are great learners and stealers.
Well, if you're not begging, you're not trying, right? So, in some respects, anyway. So, Noah, I'm going to end with this. And tell me about when you look at your life and what you've accomplished. I'm fascinated to ask you about your life and your legacy, how you want that to be defined.
Oh, it's I was glad that you know just for everybody listening, watching, um Kevin is nice enough to give us at least a few things to think about before the interview, this was one of them. You know, I often think about wanting to leave my mark, wanting to feel like I affected people, which is, I feel like with the podcast and my writing, we have a blog. Podcast is part of it. It's called Today's Machining World. The podcast, teaching people things, making people think, entertaining people, feeling like I've affected people. That is super important to me. Now I'm a father, so obviously, knowing that I've done a great job raising my child. My child is one, name is Abraham, and he's a legacy. I want to, the most important one. So I want to have done a great job with him and make him into a great person. But yeah, I think about it a lot more than a lot of people. This idea of purpose, idea of wanting each day to have some meaning, wanting each day to count, whether it's counting because I had a lot of joy getting to be around my family. I met a new person. Maybe help feed my family. Maybe I helped someone. That's another great thing, knowing that you helped. Maybe somebody called wanting help to figure out what machine to buy or something, and it wasn't about me making any money off them, whatever. It was just about being generous and kind to somebody. So those are the little things. I hope people remember me for the little things, and I hope people remember me as somebody who affected a lot of people. Everything's relative, right? I don't know how many podcast listeners, watchers you get. You probably get more than mine. I usually, I get 500-600 in an episode or something. But sometimes people text me or write something on LinkedIn and they say, "Oh my God, that was great." And So, I'm sure other people would kill for having that many listeners, but everything's relative. But knowing that, like, I struck a chord with somebody, that's just an incredible feeling. Don't you, I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah, life is about impacting people, and life is such a gift of finite amount of time, and uh, uh, I firmly believe that the knowledge you can share with others is an extension of your legacy. Because if you can inspire people to reach the fullest heights of their potential, then you've really done.
I mean, that's what you do for a living. You're a pub, you're a motivational speaker. Is that?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like, that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all about. I always tell people when I talk to them that we're all given a life compass, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of point it in the direction that we want to go. And I always say that the tragedy rather of life isn't when you die; it's refusing to live while you're still here. So when you put life into perspective, it can be a powerful tool for sure, my friend. But tell me, finally, Noah, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Sure. Well, um, I would love for people to try out the podcast and read our blog. You can listen to it at Swarfcast. That's SWARFCAST. You can go to swarfcast.com, and that'll go to our website, which is also connected to our blog, Today's Machining World. And now I'm getting too complicated. So just look for Swarfcast. I'm also on LinkedIn and other social. Look for Noah Graff. And I'm always open to making connections. I love talking to new people, and I feel like it was serendipitous that I came across your podcast just doing research. I mean, I had no idea who you were. I just looked, and it was serendipitous that we interviewed the same guest, and then you take it from there. That one dot led to me finding out about you and emailing you, and now we're here, and I wouldn't be shocked what if this led to something else.
Well,
Beautiful thing.
Life is a small world after all, my friend, and I want to I want to thank you for joining me in conversation to talk about serendipity, life, and maximizing our fullest potential. Your work in the space and time on my behalf this afternoon is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here.
It was. I'm grateful for you and grateful for the opportunity to be on your podcast. And you're somebody that I'd like to get to know more. We'll have to keep in touch.